Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Bluedragonfive here.
And Rohith Dhar.
Ladies and gentlemen, I gotta confess, I truly hate these types of podcasts most because it pains me to say this past Saturday, Arleen Sorkin passed away after a battle with MS. Of course, she is best and most fondly remembered as inspiring and portraying the character of Harley Quinn, who of course has permeated pop culture and is a omnipresent symbol of Batman the Animated Series. This was very this was a very unexpected and tragic loss, especially so soon after losing Kevin Conroy. All my heroes are dying off, folks, and it's a rough one. It's a rough one indeed. I felt proper that we reflect on the life and impact that Arlene Sorkin's had, and kind of like not just that she's had on the medium of film, but also television, just kind of in our lives, just the laughs that she's brought as Harley Quinn, and just kind of the laughs she's brought in life. I think it's how she would have liked it. So, Rohit, what's been your take on all this?
In light of the fact of her passing away with MS, it's unfortunate. I don't know personally anyone with MS, but what I've known of the disease and what's has been, you know, displayed throughout just media, it's a really rough disease, and I just only hope Arlene Sorkin had, was surrounded by her loved ones and had peace in her last moments. But overall for her life, she has been such a influential part of a lot of people my generation that are into sort of the superhero genre, whether through animation with BTS, with video games through Batman Arkham Asylum, and just through the comics and seeing a character like Harley Quinn being so iconic, so you know memorable in her with her performance that it was one of the few characters from another medium to transfer over into comics. And things like the Harley Quinn animated series, Margot Robbie's performance as Harley Quinn in the DCU, all that stems from this one woman who, through a, a great and loving partnership, a creative partnership with the likes of Paul Dini and Bruce Timm, has formulated a character that, in some respects, is probably one of the most popular characters in the DC universe. And it's all from this one actress who has a very particular background, particular personality, sensibilities that has pervaded it beyond just our television screens and into our hearts.
Very true. And speaking of the television screen, we should probably kind of go through things a little linearly here, just given the fact that in some sense, similar to Kevin Conroy, she was not known for a lot, but interestingly, the way Kevin Conroy was, the big acting gig that he had for decades was playing Batman, and he had other gigs on the side, of course. A few things that came after being recognized as Batman. Um, Arlene had a character that kind of transformed into Harley Quinn in an interesting sense. She had this big role on a soap opera called Days of Our Lives. She played Calliope Jones. Now, I hate soap operas with a burning passion, but the clips of which I've looked in this, besides the obvious one that factors into the origin of Harley Quinn, this is like a soap opera like from '84 to 1990. She basically embodies everything we see in Harley Quinn. She's it's kind of it's a fun character, very kind of a screwball, just kind of like she's the comic relief in a sense, but very much I imagine a highlight of the show, and that kind of bleeds into the origin of Harley Quinn. So Paul Dini met Arlene in college, and they were friends. I presume he was probably going there for writing, and she ultimately for performing. And they've been friends, and basically Deanie saw her soap opera, and there was like this episode you can find on the clips of which you can find on YouTube, in which it's Calliope Jones and like the storybook themed kind of dream sequence episode in which she is a court jester, entertaining, like this very bored out of their mind royal family, and basically like a comedian bombing on stage. It's hysterical. She's in the makeup and everything, and at the same time, Deanie is doing Joker's favor, which is a big episode. It's the first like full Deanie Joker episode, and like plus having Mark Hamill actually full on Joker, where he's not just like doing his Joker voice on top of Tim Curry audio, like in the early episodes of the early first two or three episodes of Batman the Animated Series. So yeah, this is a big episode. So he's thinking, okay, what can I do to make this special? So Joker has henchmen that we're going to need for some action later. What if we threw in a hench wench? What if we threw in kind of like a nod to the malls from Batman '66, like a Judy Holiday vibe, and kind of like meld the two together? I got an idea. I'm going to put my friend Arleen in the episode. Did a quick little sketch you can find in the art of book that he's very embarrassed by because Bruce Timm's the artist, Dini's the writer. Did a quick sketch of what Arlene would look like in in somewhat of a jester costume. Kind of a really rough version of it. And yeah, and like lo and behold, we have a one-off hench girl that basically kind of entertained us all so much. It's like, man, we like this character so much. We gotta bring her back. Let's put her in more Joker episodes, maybe even stuff beyond Joker episodes. There you go.
Yeah, and I think what's really great about her performance is that if you look towards the foundations of how Bruce Timm, Paul Dini, Alan Brand, like that entire crew approached in making Batman animated series, the focus was to have sort of a retro contemporary, the Art Deco architecture, the 40s noir elements in terms of the clothing, the cars, and the vibes. And for Arlene Sorkin's performance, I think what really contributed to that kind of um, creative whole is that her performance is very evocative of vaudevillian, classic clown, circus antics, and that really made her such a noteworthy character because I think, if you look to say the Looney Tunes and the old WB cartoons, you have that kind of comedic sensibilities there. But I think at that time, outside of the Warren Border cartoons, like really that kind of humor hasn't been so prominent. But I think with Arlene Sorkin, she infused this kind of vaudevillian clown theatrics with sort of this sexy playfulness that made her such a standout character in her debut episode, Joker's Favor, that made audiences fell in love with her, fell in love with Arlene Sorkin, and because of that, she went on to appear in other DCAU shows. She went on to voice Harley Quinn in Batman Arkham Asylum, and because of her noteworthy performance, that character is in the comics and is in the Harley Quinn animated show, DCAU. All that stems because people just loved Arlene Sorkin. You would not have Harley Quinn without Arlene Sorkin. And I think for that alone, she, deserves to be considered among the legends.
Oh, for sure. I mean, something else to mention too with Harley Quinn is how great she turned out. I mean, Bruce Timm, early seasons of Batman the Animated Series, the first season, he's really he's kind of getting comfortable drawing the attractive kind of female characters that, of course, he'd be very renowned for. He's kind of thanks to Lynn Naylor, kind of giving some pointers. We have like Poison Ivy, and then we have Catwoman. But really, that's just kind of like him, just kind of getting the swing of things, and kind of these are very well known characters. But Harley Quinn being an original, you have again that really rough Dini drawing, and then based on that, Bruce Timmey really kind of crafts this perfect character in Harley Quinn that is married with Dini's writing, Arlene Sorkin, and basically being adapted through Dini's writing, and just kind of like how do you visualize that? So it's kind of this perfect marriage of within her two creators there.
Mm-hmm. And I think I'm just looking at sort of the image we have on the thumbnails that they're on the right. Like just that look, like it is such that Harley Quinn outfit. Even though it's not as prominent in modern, Harley Quinn iterations, whether in comics or in animated media, it's still an iconic costume. And the fact that as soon as you see that image on the right, you can just imagine Arlene Sorkin just ad libbing and just playing it loose. it always was the charm to see her because even though she was just kind of basically the like henchwoman or an antagonist, there was a fun to her that made her antics, more appreciable than grating for lack of a
It's
better term.
it's an interesting kind of pairing with the Joker, where the Joker is like he makes you laugh, but you hate yourself for laughing. In which Harley Quinn is like, she's allied with such a terrible person, but she's so delightful to watch. It's like, oh man, why can't she? You kind of want her to go to the side of angels here and there, and of course, that's kind of a story point in the Harley Quinn animated show. But it's like, it's kind of it's always something built in with the character. You love seeing her any way you can get her.
Yeah, and I think part of that, and I think that's the testament to Arleen Sorkin as a performer is that even if she's doing these terrible things and she has this kind of like this level of menace to her in her voice and just how she delivers lines and just interacts with other characters, there is this kind of you do like, oh, Harley Quinn, that rascal, you can't help but love her. And I think this is something that you mentioned or something that people always talk about is that Arlene Sorkin, not only is she a great performer, just on her own as Harley Quinn, she's also a great collaborator and she's a great, like, sort of, as a scene partner, she's a great voice partner. And if you think she's great on her own, imagine her just going back and forth with Mark Hamill's Joker, or Kevin Conroy's Batman, these iconic legends like
Diane Pershing's Poison Ivy.
yeah, and any of those voice actors when they're in a scene together, all three, all four are in it. It's just magic,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's sort of the beauty of voice actors, especially how bad they made series when all the voice actors are in one room. You feel that level of chemistry and that level of um, dynamism that is very hard to capture in voice acting.
Sure, sure. Of course, Andre Romano was able to bring out the best in all of these wonderful people. So something fun to mention. Cookie, anime fan, brings up how I heard that the idea for Harley's creation came about because Cesar Romero's Joker often having blonde girl henchwoman. Yeah, that's so in '60s Batman, they had like these malls, they'd call them, like basically the female hench girl who would basically be like, you see the Riddler would have one like Jill St. John in the pilot, for example, which also is kind of incidentally the inspiration behind Carrie Kelly Robin, but we're not going to get on that track now. It's just the fact that you'd have like a token girl character with the bad guys to be like, okay, and here's something that maybe Robin's gonna like, get a little flustered under the collar or something, or we're just gonna have like just have some eye candy in the scene because it's the '60s. So yeah, it was kind of like something kind of along those lines. Then we went for like a literal mall with kind of the mobster angle with Jack Nicholson with Grissom's girlfriend, and
Mhm.
as Cody Gas later goes on to bring up with the other blonde girlfriend, who's again is somewhat of a proto Harley. One could deem.
Mhm.
Anyway, so I think so. Look, we could spend all day here, like breaking all the DCAU appearances of Harley Quinn. I think maybe just the ones that are significant to what Arlene kind of brought to the role might suffice, or any ones we have like a connection to and stuff like that. So Joker's favor. Again, it's the big introduction. Interesting. She's only in the costume for like one scene in that episode, but I think that it really goes to show like the strength of the character is that taking her out of the costume, she's still entertaining as all get out as part of like this Trojan cake gag for Gordon's testimonial. Where like he's, like she's the entertainment and the cop costume. Like hitting Bullock in the shins and seemingly okay, it's just they're gonna embarrass the boss or something. But like, and of course things turn south. Things
Yeah,
go.
but what's great about the fact that she's in the costume only one scene and that's like near the end, correct? Is she near? And then like, the fact that he wears the costume in one scene, I think it's kind of to the benefit of that episode and just her introduction because you just kind of see her energy, and then when the costume is put on, it's like, oh, this is just her real self. So I think this is just part of the magic of BTS where you have Arlie Sorkin playing sort of this regular human character, and then when she puts on the costume, she's like another being, or just her revealing her true self, just as like in Greek myths, gods will come down to be man, but and pretend to be human, but eventually you just see their sort of magic and awe. And I think for Arleen Sorkin, her putting on the costume really set the tone for that character and what she would do later on.
Yeah. So, Kogia says Harley was originally put into the episode because they wanted her to come out of the John Cake instead of the Joker. I mean, somewhat true. Again, I think it was just more like they needed a hench girl for the earlier scene, and just they kind of like it. But I don't know. I never heard that she was supposed to come out of the cake, but it would make sense though that she was supposed to come out of the cake.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so I when I think of Arlen Sorkin's Harley Quinn, I think of Harley Quinn. Period. Aside from I think as we all think of Mad Love, which we'll get to,
Mhm.
I'm thinking of Laughing Fish. Hands down, my favorite episode of Batman the Animated Series. I've memorized that episode. I love it. Like she just comes in there. It's like, how do we take like this episode that's supposed to be like the quintessential Joker Batman episode? You have kind of add a spoke to the wheel. Like, okay, so Harley Quinn does the introduction, like, look alive, Wade slaves and mogul of Mountebanks. And, the Joker, the Joker! And you see, he walks in. It's just, they're off to the races. It's like you can see Arlene's having so much fun. They're letting her sing a little bit, like they're finny and funny and oh so delish, using a little bit of the Yiddish in there. It's, it's just loads of fun. She's taking on Bullock. The chemistry that she has with Mark Hamill because the way they recorded that. There's just so much great chemistry and fun and like the vaudevillian. Where it's like he's just like, this cape has been rough on you, hasn't it, Harley? Mm-hmm. You
What
can be my own little mermaid. Ooh. He puts like the big old fish head on her. You're real sick, that, boss. Mm-hmm. It's delightful.
what I really appreciate about Arlene Sorkin's voice performance about Harley Quinn is compared to like her colleagues, Mark Hamill and Kevin Conroy's voice performances as Joker and Batman respectively are great. But I think it's interesting to think about how for both Mark Hamill and Kevin Conroy, they had to kind of transform and become something very different from their typical personalities, backgrounds. And whereas for Arlene Sorkin, it's kind of in a way, it's Harley Quinn is sort of Arlene Sorkin, just really heightened to like the nth to like the 11th degree, and I think that's kind of what makes her such a standout character is that she does Harley Quinn in a way does kind of feel like someone someone a friend that is just very funny, very goofy, and but also is like has her wits about her. She's not a complete goof, and oftentimes she can use that persona as kind of a means to have people underestimate her. And
Yeah, she is good at what she does. She's a very valuable ally to have.
yeah, I mean, considering Harley Quinn was formerly a psychiatrist, Arlene Sorkin, I think, was given such a lot of range and a lot of opportunity to really flesh out this character. And I think Dini, in being such good friends with her, recognized how intelligent and how funny and central and playful she was, and just let her let's put with my friend and just the energy and vibes that she just emanates and let her play in a superhero world. And I think that's kind of what makes Harley Quinn such a standout. It's just this is just someone but doing some dastardly things, but you can't help but love her at the same time.
There's one bit specifically in Batman the Animated Series. I feel it was one of the funniest record sessions they ever had, apparently, and it's a gag that I think says everything you need to know about what Arlene Sorkin's strength was and what she brought to the character. It was from the man who killed Batman. Of course, now people looking back at it, we're losing all these our wonderful characters. And a lot of people, of course, when Conroy died, they had like Joker's funeral for Batman, and Harley there. Of course, now it's doubly sad. But you have the casket with the bat with the cowl being and Sid the Squid being lowered into the acid. Harley Quinn playing Amazing Grace, and actually Arlene Sorkin is actually given a kazoo, and she's playing Amazing Grace in the record, and everyone behind the glass just lost it completely. Just her like on a whim, just like kazooing Amazing Grace so flawlessly, and that sums up Arlene Sorkin perfectly to me. I think that's like she could embody the silly in like the serious moment, but just she did put the fun in funeral in that moment, which is exactly what that moment called for. This like Joker's actually shedding a legit tear over Batman, but he can only get away with that because she's doing something so ridiculous and silly. And you have that really nice Joker Harley moment too, where like she says, you really put the fun in funeral pudding, and then like, he grabs her cheek. It's like it's something like a legit touching moment between the two of them amidst the circumstances. There's a lot in that moment.
Yeah, I also think too, like Arlie Serkins, like we all talk about how she's funny and playful, but there are moments where she can feel very sympathetic and very endearing. I think back to the moment to that one episode where Batman is basically keeping an eye out of Harley Quinn, and at the end of that episode, she generally asks like, well, why I'm sorry,
Harley's Holiday.
yeah, it's Holland, and that, and just her level of vulnerability, her level of just humanity in that scene with Kevin Conroy's Batman, and Kevin Conroy just plays it so well. Um, it really shows that Arlene wasn't just a funny voice actress; she also was just a genuine performer. Like she can display wide ranges of emotion, and I think both in the fact that she has that talent and also in the fact that writers like Paul Dini and artists like Bruce Timm gave her that space and encouraged her to like express all that sides of herself, made Harley Quinn be the stand-up that she was in Batman animated series and just overall in fiction.
It really goes to the show of Batman constantly tried to redeem and reform his bad guys, and the animated series had a number of really good episodes dedicated to this premise. And the closest he could ever come to redeeming a villain, and given how their trajectory in comics and stories and everything, the only villain you can actually do that with is Harley Quinn.
And
So it's a really it's a that is you're really I think you hit on something really good there. Is that it is such a really beautiful moment where she says like, why didn't you give up on me? Of course, Batman doesn't want to give up on anyone. He has that like I
yeah,
had a bad
I,
day too once.
and I think why that character is noteworthy for having the most potential for redemption is that she's a new character. She was a character created for the show, and I think because of that, um, that character didn't belong to the fans because that character just was made new. It belonged to originally Arleen Sorkin, Paul Dini, Bruce Timm, all those individuals creating and molding a character that can make you laugh and make your heart kind of grow a few inches, and that's sort of the magic of Arleen Sorkin as a performer and the doubling of the multiplier effect of that talent and just the writing and animation that and looking at Harley Quinn, the image on the right of this thumbnail, I just think of Arlene Sorkin just in my head, and that's the power of a standard performance, standard writing, and standard direction. It all coalesces into a character that is just heavily defining for a lot of people, especially people my age, born in the mid to late '90s and grew up with her playing Harley Quinn in the DCU or playing Batman Arkham Asylum. It's just that level of versatility, that level of joy, and Arlie Sorkin being as great a performer as she is. It's really sad that we couldn't have had more opportunities to see her perform her best, whether in Harley Quinn or any other role, voice acting or live action.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing too, because it was a very finite time that she played Harley Quinn. Now, admittedly, expanding over like the decades, we did get back in the animated series, but I mean, she was not voicing it till the end. She did pass off the role to other acclaimed voice actors like Tara Strong, for example.
Mm.
Speaking of which, so one of the great episodes of Batman series, Harley Quinn, big breakout episode for her. As gray as that episode is, inspired that very dumb Batman Harley Quinn animated movie. We don't want to really dwell on here, but the same premise is my point too. That episode's like a fool. That coupled with Harley's Holiday, these are big screwball team up episodes for Harley Quinn. So fun, like her contrast to the Batman. It's a great showcase of her talents. Like she's singing this song that she and Deanie would like, what she'd sing in the car when the carpooling to work with Deanie. You had this, she's basically singing the song to distract everyone from Robin, like saving Batman. It's we have this intense and kind of Looney Tunes moment at the end where, oh my god, she's gonna blow the Joker's head off. And it's rat tat tat, just the little flag coming out there, and they have like this honeymooners ending where like oh shucks, baby, you're the greatest. Just forgives her, and it's like she was gonna murder me. I love that. Just again, just like Harley shenanigans, indeed.
I
Yeah,
I always really appreciated whenever whenever she showed up and she had her dynamics with a lot of other female characters like Mercy Graves, Poison Ivy, famously. I also one of the episodes that kind of is always a fun episode to watch is the TNB episode where Batgirl and Supergirl team up and go up against Harley
girls' night out.
Girls Night Out, yeah, and it's such a and Arleen Sorkin, like she's firing all cylinders, and I think it's so noteworthy that she was one of the early standout female performance voice performances in DCU, and the fact that like her costume on the right is so heavily cosplayed and there's so much fan art and it's just and you honestly I can imagine like a GIF being sent with like dialogue at the bottom that I just read in Arlen Sorkin's voice. Like she's that pivotal, so etched the core memory of a lot of people that grew up watching Batman animated series, and I think that's something that is going to be sorely missed. I think not only is it just sad for us as the general public and watching it work, but I can't imagine how worse it would feel for any for collaborators or coworkers that have had the pleasure of working with her and had such great times with her, both in a professional setting and in just a personal setting. Especially Paul Dini.
I mean, yeah, I mean Dini is above all else, but I mean, there's Dini, there's Hamill, but I mean also, I mean, I can't imagine what Diane Pershing's going through. I mean, those two are, you have to imagine all the fun episodes they've done together, and the package deal they've become. It's like that was like a match made in heaven. Those two together. It's the whole reason, one half the reason we have like a Harley Quinn animated show like right now. It's the great contrasting, kind of personalities and the likability factor of Harley Quinn that allowed her. It's like what Amanda Connor did with Harley in the comics, in which it's like you don't get the adaptability of Harley Quinn without that initial team up of her and Poison Ivy. You don't get like her turning up with her and working with Batman, doing all sorts of stuff there, and just kind of seeing her like, oh, what kind of wacky situations can we put what can we do with Harley Quinn? Like, what's kind of the spin-off potential here?
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Let's not bury. Let's talk about Mad Love. Okay, Mad Love, very the most important Harley. So without Arleen Sorkin, we don't get the Mad Love comic and/or episode. I mean, obviously the episodes where we're going to be able to talk about the performance, but I mean, period though, we don't get debatably one of the best Batman stories ever written with Mad Love without her. I mean, it's an iconic Batman story. It's an iconic story that gives us the backstory on Harley Quinn that's utterly heartbreaking and perfect. Just this, and the fact that it's so interesting when you look at Batman Answers, they didn't have a backstory on her until that Harley Quinn 8 episode in the third season, because Mad Love comes out, I believe, in '94.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're in season 3 by that point. They kind of have like a throwaway line about, okay, so she was a clinical psychologist, but we never really saw the backstory there. And you had the comic coming out roughly around the same time as that to actually fill in the blanks. And let me ask you this: how do you feel about the Mad Love comic versus the animated adaptation of that story?
I guess the animated episode is a little bit better because I don't love the fact that the comic very much implies that Harley Quinn like slept her way through.
I know. It's funny. It's kind of a tool. It's kind of like it's a double-edged sword. Because on one hand, yeah, we have that gag, which I'm not crazy about. Other hand, though, there's one moment in that comic that we do not get in that episode. It always ticks me off that we didn't get in that episode. Just one moment. The moment where Batman drops off the Joker, and he's all after he escaped, and he brings back the beaten up Joker, and he falls in her arms. And there was this amazing Harley Quinn moment where Dr. Quinzel looks up at Batman with utter disdain, hatred, and anger in her eyes that actually takes Batman aback. And it's like, because again, she's just to show you how far gone she is down the rabbit hole of the Joker at this point, right before she's about to make the big choice. It's like, oh, I know it was like a timing thing, and I know it's also why we don't get the cool fantasy sequence in the episode, but it's like, oh man, it's like we do everything in that scene, but you see, look at that comic, and oh my god, it's a brilliant moment. Obviously, there's only so much you can do voice work wise to really get that moment in there, so you can probably see why they didn't bother adapting that, but still, man, and regardless, I'm drifting off focus here. My point is, um, well, the comic also does the original look to it from the animated series versus the revamp, which I think also kind of like hoists it a little above there. That episode, her performance, the best thing she ever did in the role that no one ever gives her enough credit for. The shift between Dr. Quinzel and Harley Quinn, like the very kind of the vaudevillian Brooklyn-y kind of like Yiddish accent that we kind of know and love from her, and like the put together doctor, and it was a brilliant choice by her and maybe Andrea Romano as well in the figuring out this episode. Okay, what does Harley sound like before, essentially the quote Robin, before she was bonkers? And it makes all the sense in the world. This is a put together person, and how do we kind of show like Joker having broken her psyche, having got deep in there and made her mentally unhinged, and it's even better is the way in which she kind of brings it back to trap Batman, like on the dock. You remember?
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, that whole thing. Yeah,
And I think what makes that I think my favorite moment is just when Harley Quinn just reveals, oh, this is my plan to Batman, and then Batman just like starts laughing.
oh
And
yeah.
the way, not only just the props to the animators and expressing so much emotion with the Harley Quinn's facial reactions, and just ultra like Arleen Sorkin just like trembles in her voice, because it's very unnerving for Batman to ever laugh, especially Kevin Conroy Batman, because it's kind of very
You
there
know,
is.
you can only get away with it twice, really. Only, well, technically three times. You only get away with it three times ever. You have it there, you have it in Killing Joke, and
Mhm.
you have it in Return of the Joker.
Yeah, and just the way that episode ends, and it's just such good writing. The fact that Harley Quinn just is like all damaged up, and there's a note from Mr. J, and she's like goes from she does a complete 180 from hating the Joker and not want to do anything to just completely in love. And Arleen Sorkin, just throughout that episode, you are frustrated with Harley, but you still want to, help her out and just take care of her, because, just in that episode and really throughout most of her career, she is a victim, and she does, she does
Isn't
bad.
that such a perfect way to recontextualize that character, that we laugh at her, but we see there's already like a likability, but now we have such sympathy with her now.
Yeah, and I think what's so great in just in that episode is that, in a way, if you could really put yourself in Harley's shoes, when she's a psychiatrist, and the way the Joker interacts with her, Mark Hamill just does great, voice acting in that episode, and as well as any other episode. But I think just his ways of trying to endear, Harley to him, telling a story about his abusive dad and all that stuff. It's like you it's a testament to the writing and voice acting in that episode, that you start to see, you may not completely have gone the 100% what Harley went through in, freeing the Joker and being sort of his henchwoman, but there is this underlying understanding of like how a person like that, who I feel like in the way the episode characters Harley, she's very, all about her work, and does he have much friends? And I think just the initial interactions with the Joker, that kind of spark, that can only be brought about to just the dual talents of Arlen Sorkin and Mark Hamill, really define that character, and just what makes that character unique and very interesting to utilize in stories in Batman or other media.
Undeniably. So I guess too, just in terms of like how certain things bleed over. Obviously, Mad Love I think really gave her like the thing that really stand the test of time. Plus, I forget if it was the Eisner Award or if it was the Harvey. I think it was the Eisner Award. Mad Love won awards. Is my point there. So, I mean, in comics, she's already has like this great standalone piece as well as just hers being introduced to the comics period and like No Man's Land and what have you and everything. You have just the state power of like all the love that the Batman Answers has instilled. Like with Harley's Holiday, for example, we get a big element of the Batman White Knight comic, which is kind of taking the world by storm. It's really good, by the way. I love the White Knight comic. And in White Knight, you have this bit where we call back moments from the animated series that kind of bond together. Bruce Wayne and the Batman and Harley Quinn in the White Knights franchise of stories.
And not only that, but also like think to the Harley Quinn animated series, and like that costume was there for the first two episodes of the first season.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a case file that makes references to BTS episodes, and both Kaylee Coco's Harley Quinn and Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn shares the exact same origin. From DCAU Harley Quinn, which is psychiatrist was seduced by the Joker and fell into a vat of that. Well, the vat of acid part is more recent
Well,
stuff.
yeah, so it's more of it's a new 52 thing.
But I think the same genesis is there about this, professional woman that is so lovelorn with a raging psychopath, and you can't help but be compassionate towards her, even if she does really horrific stuff, and especially in the DCU, where we go to sort of Batman Beyond, Return of the Joker,
Mhm.
and the stuff that they have Harley Quinn do with the Joker for
So this is interesting.
yeah.
Return of the Joker, the darkest thing Harley Quinn's ever done in helping the Joker is retroactively, like it's kind of a thing where okay, in the DCAU we're kind of looking back in the history of Batman here, and we're kind of I know now very recently with the Adventure Continues kind we actually did legitimize like if we found a place to do the full on Jason Todd story, which is really cool. But let's just say for argument's sake, taking the stuff's been animated. Retroactively, we've involved her in a Jason Todd affair of sorts with Tim Drake. And in the White Knight comic, we kind of explore how Harley would react to that sort of thing. Interestingly, I guess we get is like yeah we have Harley be party to something really bad, and that's kind of the furthest we've pushed her as far as Arlen Sorkin's played that character, and it's so sweet that like Paul Dini, he just loved her so much, just like the audience. I was like, no, we can't kill her, no. So we don't 100% kill her off in in that story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no. And what I think was really interesting in that flashes sequences, like for Joker and Harley to kidnap Tim Drake and basically trying to make him into Joker Junior. There's that kind of like, oh, we're getting older in the years, and you want to have sort of a family. And I wish in another universe you have seen Joker and Harley have an actual kid, because it would have been so interesting for Arlen Sorkin to like what would it be like for her to play a Harley that's a mother. And we've had like stories where like Harley Quinn gets pregnant and has a kid, from the Joker, and that's kind of interesting dynamic. But I think Arlene Sorkin, with how playful and how kind of even though she's crazy and can be violent, there is still that lovableness to her. It would have been very interesting for Arlene Sorkin to have played a Harley Quinn that maybe was a parent with the Joker.
Yeah, I mean the closest we kind of again not factoring in White Knight because obviously we've explored that in that story, at least in the sequel, like kind of the franchise of that story. You have like the Tom Taylor stuff with Injustice, in which she's not a mother, but she's kind of an aunt. She's kind of like maternal. She cares about Green Arrow's kid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so stuff like that we see kind of like like Harley kind of bonded with kind of kids and stuff in a sense because there is kind of an innocence there and there's a whacking. She's kind of like the crazy, somewhat homicidal aunt.
Yeah, and funny. Well, funny and well, it's kind of an operative word, but interestingly enough, that like that kind of that like, story idea of like Harley Quinn having a kid was also in the Arkham games, and I just remember in Arkham City or the DLC Harley Quinn's Revenge, where there's like the pregnancy test that eventually turned out to be a false positive.
Yeah,
It's I think it would have been.
I don't think Dini wrote that DLC though.
No, he didn't. I don't know if he did. I
I'm
know he
pretty sure he didn't, but I don't.
But I think, regardless, I think for Arleen Sorkin, because of how funny and likable she was, I think the fact that her character was seriously considered to was like, all right, let's imagine this character be like a parent, like having a kid. Like you could really imagine that for any other Bat villain at that time that didn't already have like I mean Ra's al Ghul was like the only one who has a kid, and all the other bad villains aren't really have really in most iterations been in parental roles, but the fact that Arlene Sorkin is kind of like the fact that she kind of can have that energy and is believable in a sick and twisted way, I think is just a test. It's just further reinforcing just the how great a voice actor he is. I especially love the part where she's singing the Mockingbird song, where she's trying to hunt down Batgirl with the bazooka in Return of the Joker. And it's just like it's just the versatile performance.
Oh, for sure. I mean, yeah. Plus, add like a creepy layer to that scene too, with the whole like like I was gonna buy a diamond ring and everything.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so speaking of a balance of things, and a lot of Dini we've been citing here, one of the most interesting things that come out recently, and this is not something she specifically voiced, but this interestingly is something we kind of we kind of learned about her. So Paul Dini and Tiki and I, we did a breakdown of this book. We loved it. It's this great. For me, it's like this is like a shelf book, man. This is like one of the best Batman stories I've ever read in my life. Dark Knight, true Batman story. So this is about Paul Dini's real life experience in which he was mugged and almost fatally one night, and basically recovering from the trauma of those events, and basically kind of like through the artistry of Rizzo's style and everything, we're kind of like depicting it and kind of like what if Dini's recovery it was a little bit more kind of like through the vein of the characters they worked on.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, we have Harley Quinn, I mean, Arleen Sorkin, but Harley Quinn to an extent by the very end of the story. Arlene Sorkin is basically in that story again, depicting the events. Like she's in the story as like caring about him, being his friend and everything. But also, she's kind of framed as like an angel of mercy in his life. Which I think is how he kind of views the Harley Quinn character to an extent. She's the confidant, she's the friend. It's not a romantic or anything. But, she's like she's like that person he can trust and he can turn to. And it's like I felt it's a really I just think it's really nice. I think it did speak to kind of like the genuine friendship that they did have. Like she was like, "Yeah, Paul, it's fine. You can stay with us for a bit." No, no, I just want to be alone and everything. It's right now.
No, I think the one thing that really stood out to me when reading that story for the first time today was like, hey, I can take the ER. It's like, well, I don't want her to be awkward, for your boyfriend to be waiting, getting X-rays, and it's just like, Arlie Sorkin just doesn't care. It's like, no, it's basically like you're my friend, and I want to make sure you're okay. And I think the fact I think was really thematically interesting was that when Paul Dini's now in a good state of mind, or even a better state of mind, one of the last characters he sees is Harley Quinn.
Mm-hmm.
I think the fact that because Paul Dini's close friendship with Arlene Sorkin, and going to college with her and working with her in BTS and just throughout the DCU and Batman Arkham Asylum, she's been such a light in his life, and reading this story and seeing how dark things were for Paul Dini, it's one of those things where you're lucky to have the right person at the right time and in the right place. And I think for both Arlene Sorkin and Paul Dini, they've been both good friends and good artists, and it's such a and tragedy to lose not just a great artist but a great friend. So
Yeah, I think so I guess kind of approaching the end of things a little bit here. The last we really saw of her playing Harley Quinn before, I never knew why entirely she retired, but now hearing about the MS thing, I wonder if perhaps that was somewhat the reason. I don't know how private a battle it was, because I remember when she passed, we did not know things kind of fully here. But the last thing we ever saw her in was the first Arkham game. It was very noteworthy. She didn't come back for the other ones. I don't know if it's because she couldn't or not. I mean, I remember when I played the Arkham games, There was one thing that always stuck out to me. The some of the supplemental like, Easter egg kind of stuff where you hear like the therapy tapes of all the inmates, and they basically recreate a little bit of mad love for you
Mhm.
in the therapy. Always it didn't sound right to me because I suspect it's because we didn't get Andrea Romano, but maybe that's the case. Maybe it's not the case. I don't know. She wasn't differentiating the roles like Harleen to Harley. It's basically Harley from the beginning.
Mhm.
But it still was, it was good to see her, and it was a nice way of heralding in, like the Batman the animated series for the next generation, which is kind of how I viewed the Arkham games, at the very least the first two. It was very much like, with Dini involved, it was like, okay, it's the PG-13 version of Batman the animated series.
Yeah, I think with in light of how that character is portrayed in Arc, not that Harley Quinn doesn't do bad. She was a great voice performance, but I think the way Harley Quinn's depicted, with that T rating, and a little bit more of a provocative sexual way, I think with how you've heard her voice acting in the tapes, I think my take on it is probably that it wouldn't make sense for this version of Harley Quinn to have kind of that delineation between like soft, innocent psychiatrist Harley Quinn and mad crazy. Because I think for a cartoon, it's like you have that kind of, oh, here's this innocent character that like turns wild or crazy. But I think with a T rating, there is a little bit more room to have like a character that's a little bit, on the surface not well, and then gradually just transition to something a little bit more, chaotic. But that's probably just my take on it.
Sure, sure. And I think technically, if you want to be able to, for me, I mean, Arkham Asylum is really the last time we really hear, and then you have like kind of like the DC Universe Online game, which is like she basically delivered maybe a little bit of a monologue, but the majority of that's just kind of fighting sounds. It's kind of how that kind of game works.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, I'm dying to ask you this: did you ever see the movie that Mark Hamill made, comic book the movie? Did you ever see that?
No, I have not. I think I've heard of it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not. It's not Yates, but as far as something like little kind of like something like a little passion project of Mark Hamill's, and it's kind of it's a mockumentary essentially. And I like it. I think it's good. Is it PC necessarily? I mean, probably not. But yeah, it doesn't really. The point being, uh, the greatest thing about this thing is it's packed to the brim with voice actors in the lead roles. Like there are all voice actors in the movie.
Mhm.
And there's this cute little gag where there's Arleen Sorkin has a cameo. So for one scene, you have the Joker and Harley Quinn just kind of interacting briefly. They're not doing voices, right? She just walks up to her and like she's the secretary at the studio.
Mm.
It's a cute little gag. But again, so just to recap, we again, I recommend checking it out too. It's just really nice, especially now we're kind of losing a lot of our, losing a lot of our friends here. We should probably bask in them if while we can.
Mm.
Regardless, Batman. Sorry, so you have, we have Harley Quinn the animated series. Without Sorkin, there is no, there's no goodwill. There's no breakout star potential in that character to get her own animated series. We don't have like that show is chock full of references to Batman the animated series. We don't have Margot Robbie being cast, or at least like we don't have the casting of Margot Robbie playing Harley Quinn or a Harley Quinn. Period. We don't have a lot of the fan films that I mean, Tiki and I kind of covered ad nauseum with stuff like with like two sections of things here with the Joker blogs, which basically was an attempt at Nolanizing the Harley Quinn.
Mm.
Basically, what would have happened if Heath Ledger stuck around like within the years between the Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises, and Harley Quinn and Joker versus the Real World, which our friends at Just Giggle It was a show that they made, and they've been very recently they've been slowly but surely coming back. I wish it was under happier circumstances, recently, and they've been kind of posting about because they had a show in which it was like I don't know if you ever watched it, Rohit, but essentially it's what if the characters of the Joker and Harley Quinn were real and they moved from Gotham to Los Angeles to get away from Batman, and they're basically kind of starting a new life there from scratch.
That sounds like a really fun premise.
It is really fun. I highly recommend it. Unfortunately, it's a little on the incomplete side because they only made like about 7 episodes, 6 or 7. It's actually no, it's 6 episodes. They were gonna make 7, but then we kind of got on hold on that one. But it's good. They have like two Harley Quinn actresses, and the first one is very much in the Arleen Sorkin kind of vein, and the other one is kind of a little bit more Tara Strong esque. But yeah, it's great stuff. My point is like we don't get any of like the Harley Quinn has inspired a lot of creativity, much as Arleen Sorkin had inspired the Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
Period. But
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't have like I mentioned Batman Arkham, like the Batman Arkham games, like Harley Quinn is such a prominent part of them, like both Asylum, City, and Night. And I feel like, part of it's because Paul Dini wrote the first two games, and so Harley Quinn is sort of his baby. But I think Arlene Sorkin being as definitive as she is, made her such a likely character to show up. And now now Harley Quinn is a multimedia character, and like you can find good stories of Harley Quinn in the comics. You can watch good Harley Quinn episodes in animation. There's one or two good movies featuring Harley Quinn. And you can play some good games where Harley Quinn is in it. You can fight against her. It's really wonderful for how pivotal Harley Sorkin was in the minds and hearts of so many people and so many creative people. And and all that I have to say is just like we're lucky and blessed to have had her, be on this earth for as long as she was. And we all hope that, she felt some level of appreciation and recognition, just how much she contributed, as an artist, as a performer. And hopefully, that gave her a lot of purpose and meaning for her as it did to us, the audience.
all right, before I close this out here, I want to read some comments. Well, first I want to thank the commenters because we had Code Geass, anime fan. Richard's Victims was showed up earlier as well. Little Blue in the comments. I'm going to read a few of these too. Code Geass said, Mad Love had Arlen Sorkin's best performance, in my opinion, because she got to show the range as Harleen Quinzel before she became Joker's hench girl. Then we have Little Blue saying, I got to meet Kevin Conroy last year in June. Would have been awesome to meet the original voice of Harley Quinn in person. Well, yeah, I think so. Sad as to say, the last time I ever heard Arleen Sorkin, and she did not do many interviews at all, like barely. So the only time I ever heard her like really talk about things, and just kind of her period, it wasn't like a long interview, but it was great. Was her on Fat Man on Batman. Now it's Fat Man Beyond, but Kevin Smith's podcast, which is so unique because I mean Kevin Smith's daughter does not have a name without
Yeah, no.
Arlene Sorkin, and it's cute. Like there's stories about her meeting her and like that sort of stuff, and like like when they pretty much bought out the Warner Brothers store when the kid was born, filling it with Harley Quinn stuff, stuff like that. So it's the Arlene Sorkin had an impact. Harley Quinn, she's original Batman the Animated Series and so beloved, that she was kind of like ushered into the comics and other media. Really, it's this tribute to one special person who's one special person who stands out and is synonymous with Batman the Animated Series, much like Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill are to those roles of Batman and the Joker. Only difference is, she is, and we always say that Conroy's the definitive Batman, Mark Hamill's the definitive Joker. And again, while I stand by that, and I think that's true. You're going to have debates on like, Keaton's my Batman or Heath Ledger's my Joker, but she is by definition the definitive Harley Quinn. There is no other Harley Quinn. Obviously, I know like we've had Tara Strong take on the role and she's great, but I'm saying in terms of like the definitive book of Genesis, like you don't have Harley Quinn without this lady here. I mean, the character's history goes back like roughly 30 years, because of that. It's like Tara's only been around for so long, and thanks to her.
She's the George Washington of Harley Quinn performers.
There you go. There you go. So again, metaphorically here, we raise our kazoos and we play Amazing Grace to one special lady who enriched all of our lives and made Batman the Animated Series even more so the wonderful show that it was, and gave a lot of people a character that probably got them out of some dark times, and that made them laugh, but also made them cry when it counted.
And ultimately for Arlene Sorkin's family and loved ones,
Yes.
we hope we hope that they're tided over or they're comforted by the memories of her, not just as a performer, but as a friend and loved one. And so, in our capacity as the audience and general public, we can say nothing but thanks. And that's not even enough for Arleen Sorkin as a performer. And, Harley Quinn, just overall, it's a sad time for her passing, but in looking at her life as a whole, I think nothing but immense joy in just how much she lit up the screen.
Good night, folks.